Welcome to my channel. Today's story takes us deep into a case that haunted a family, shook a police department, and tested the limits of time and truth. Let's journey into the story of Sherri Rasmussen. Los Angeles, California. February 24, 1986. A city of glamour, sunshine, and secrets. In a quiet, upscale neighborhood in Van Nuys, something horrifying had just happened inside a cozy third-floor condo. It was supposed to be a regular Monday morning. But for John Rutan, the day began unraveling the moment he stepped inside the home he shared with his wife, 29-year-old Sherri Rasmussen. He found her crumpled on the living room floor, bloodied, bruised, lifeless. Sherri had been beaten, shot 3 times, and left to die. Glass was shattered. Furniture overturned. A TV had been pulled from the wall. It looked like a burglary gone wrong. But something didn't sit right. There were no signs of forced entry. Whoever did this, Sherri let them in. Sherri Rasmussen was not just any woman. She was a brilliant, compassionate nurse. Director of Critical Care Nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. Just 29, she'd already become the youngest person to hold that title. Fiercely driven, respected by her peers, and deeply loved by her family and friends. To her husband, John, she was the love of his life. They'd only been married 3 months. Now she was gone. Detectives immediately zeroed in on a theory: a home invasion. 2 men were supposedly burglarizing the area. The scene looked chaotic, like someone had broken in, panicked, and murdered Sherri when she surprised them. But they missed something buried in plain sight. It would take more than 2 decades before the truth clawed its way to the surface. And when it did, it would shake the very foundations of the Los Angeles Police Department. Detectives at the scene of Sherri Rasmussen's murder clung to a theory: a burglary gone wrong. It was a simple answer to a brutal crime. The condo had been ransacked. Electronics were out of place. The couple's BMW was missing. It made sense, too much sense. But Sherri's father, Nels Rasmussen, wasn't buying it. From the very beginning, he had suspicions. And they pointed in a very different direction. Sherri's father, Nels Rasmussen, said, "I told them they needed to look at that woman, that ex-girlfriend." But they wouldn't listen. That woman was Stephanie Lazarus, a young LAPD officer at the time, and John Rutan's ex-girlfriend. John and Stephanie had dated on and off in college. Even after John met and fell in love with Sherri, Stephanie was still around. She stopped by his apartment. She showed up unannounced at his office. She once even claimed to a coworker, "If I can't have John, no one will." According to friends and family, Stephanie didn't take the breakup well. She had reportedly shown up at Sherri's work, confronted her. Sherri was shaken. Her parents were worried. But the police? They didn't look into it. Stephanie had an alibi. She said she was working the day Sherri was killed. No red flags came up, because she was one of their own. And back then, evidence was limited. DNA testing wasn't what it is today. The bite mark on Sherri's arm. Bagged and stored, but not tested. The missing BMW. Found days later, abandoned. Wiped clean. And so, the case went cold. But Nels Rasmussen never gave up. Year after year, he wrote letters to the LAPD, begging them to reopen the case. Warning them about Stephanie Lazarus. He didn't know it then, but buried in an evidence freezer was the truth. A frozen clue, waiting for science, and time, to catch up. For over 20 years, the murder of Sherri Rasmussen lay dormant. Unsolved. Untouched. Gathering dust in a cold case file. To the public, it was forgotten. To the Los Angeles Police Department, it was a cold case. But to Nels Rasmussen, it was a painful wound that never healed. Every year, Nels sent letters. To LAPD commanders. To the district attorney. To anyone who would listen. pleading for someone, anyone, to take another look at the woman his daughter feared. But nothing happened. Meanwhile, Stephanie Lazarus's life had moved on. Her career at the LAPD thrived. She became a respected detective, even worked in the department's art theft detail. She carried a badge, a gun, and a secret. In 2001, a new cold case unit formed within LAPD's robbery homicide division. Detectives began pulling old files, re-examining them with fresh eyes, and new science. But Sherri's case remained buried, misfiled under burglary homicide. Not assigned. Not flagged. Years passed. Then in 2009, a break. Two detectives, reviewing Sherri's file, noticed inconsistencies. The crime scene didn't match a typical burglary. Why would a burglar shoot someone 3 times at close range, after beating them? More importantly, there was a bite mark. A wound that seemed personal. They ordered DNA testing on the swab taken from that wound, over 20 years earlier. The result? The killer was a woman. That single discovery shattered the original theory. It wasn't a burglary. It was something far more personal, and far more chilling. The detectives didn't yet know who she was. But the DNA didn't lie. And soon, they'd connect it to someone no one wanted to believe could be involved. In early 2009, Los Angeles cold case detectives had one piece of a decades-old puzzle: the killer of Sherri Rasmussen was a woman. That changed everything. The original burglary theory didn't hold. This wasn't random. This was intimate, brutal, and full of rage. Now the team had to ask a new question: who would have had the motive, and the access, to kill Sherri? They began reviewing old witness statements, case files, and one name kept surfacing. Stephanie Lazarus. A former girlfriend of Sherri's husband, John Rutan. A woman who had shown up at Sherri's hospital. A woman who had allegedly threatened her, and cried in John's arms just weeks before the wedding. And, she was one of their own. Now a veteran detective, Lazarus had worked for years inside the LAPD. She walked the same halls as the very people reinvestigating her. That made things complicated, and dangerous. They couldn't tip her off. She had access to records, people, resources. The cold case team made a bold decision: launch a secret investigation into one of their own. They needed DNA, something recent to compare to the bite mark left on Sherri's arm in 1986. So they followed her. Quietly. Patiently. Until one day, at a Costco in Simi Valley, Stephanie Lazarus finished her lunch. Threw away a cup and a fork. It was all detectives needed. They retrieved the discarded items and rushed them to the lab. The DNA was a match. Stephanie Lazarus was now the prime suspect in the cold-blooded murder of Sherri Rasmussen. But arresting a fellow officer would be a different kind of challenge. January 2010. The LAPD prepared to confront one of their own, a decorated detective, accused of cold-blooded murder. Stephanie Lazarus had been arrested quietly. No fanfare. No leaks. Just the heavy weight of suspicion now crushing her carefully built life. Interrogation rooms are designed to break down walls. For Lazarus, the stakes were higher than ever. Her career. Her freedom. Her future. But Lazarus was trained to stay calm under pressure. For hours, she denied everything, claimed she had no memory of that day. No idea how her DNA ended up at the scene. But detectives were relentless. Piece by piece, they laid out the timeline. Stephanie had an unshakable motive: jealousy. She had loved John Rutan, and when he married Sherri, she reportedly told friends, "If I can't have him, no one will." Witnesses confirmed she'd made threats. People remembered her visits to Sherri's workplace, her attempts to interfere in the marriage. As the hours ticked on, cracks began to appear. The perfect alibi dissolved. Finally, after intense questioning, Lazarus confessed, admitting to confronting Sherri that fateful day. What began as a confrontation spiraled out of control. Rage exploded. She struck Sherri repeatedly. When Sherri tried to escape, Lazarus shot her 3 times. The murder was a dark act born of obsession and betrayal. A brutal silence that had lasted more than 2 decades. For the family of Sherri Rasmussen, justice was no longer just a hope, it was finally within reach. With the confession secured, the investigation shifted from the hunt to the courtroom. But this was no ordinary trial. Stephanie Lazarus was a respected LAPD detective. Her colleagues knew her. Some even trusted her. Now, the department's own was accused of murder, shattering the public's faith and raising uncomfortable questions. Inside the walls of justice, the defense pushed back hard. They painted Lazarus as a woman crushed by heartbreak, but they denied a cold-blooded killer and she walked free for decades. But the prosecution had a mountain of evidence: DNA, the confession, witness testimonies, and the bite mark. And there was something more: the emotional toll on Sherri's family. Nels Rasmussen sat through every hearing, a father fighting for the memory of his daughter. He said, "She deserved to live. She deserved justice. For 23 years, I waited for this day." The courtroom was tense. Each testimony peeled back layers of pain and betrayal. Friends described Sherri as kind, ambitious, full of life. A woman who had no enemies, except the one who took her away. Stephanie's colleagues testified, some shocked, some conflicted. But the evidence was clear. The jury had a heavy decision to make. Behind closed doors, the LAPD faced scrutiny. How did a detective accused of murder remain on the force? How did the original investigation miss such critical leads? The department vowed to learn from the mistakes, to never let a case like this fall through the cracks again. After months of testimony, the moment everyone waited for had arrived: the verdict. The courtroom was packed. Family, friends, media, all eyes fixed on the jury as they filed back into the room. The weight of 23 years of unanswered questions pressed heavily on the room. Sherri Rasmussen's family, sitting silently, held their breath. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder." Guilty. The word echoed like a thunderclap, shaking the very walls of justice. Stephanie Lazarus was convicted of the brutal murder of Sherri Rasmussen. Her actions were a tragic reminder of how jealousy, obsession, and rage can destroy lives. For the Rasmussen family, the verdict brought a bittersweet closure. Justice had finally been served, but the loss remained raw and real. Sentencing followed swiftly: 27 years to life in prison. A sentence meant to honor Sherri's memory and ensure her killer would never harm another. The case sent ripples through the LAPD and beyond, forcing a deep look at how police departments handle internal investigations, and how justice can sometimes be delayed but never denied. For Sherri Rasmussen, a life interrupted by violence; for her family, a long journey through grief; and for the city of Los Angeles, a haunting reminder that truth can be buried, but never forgotten. The verdict had come down, and Stephanie Lazarus was behind bars. But the ripples of this case extended far beyond the courtroom walls. For the Rasmussen family, justice was both a relief and a heavy burden. Sherri's parents, Nels and Sandra, had waited more than 2 decades for answers. The pain of losing their daughter had never faded. But finally, they felt a measure of peace. "We still miss her every day, but knowing who did this, and that she's been held accountable, means the world to us," said the father Nels Rasmussen. The case reopened deep wounds for the LAPD. How had a detective, one of their own, committed such a violent crime, and walked free for so long? The department launched internal reviews. They examined policies around evidence handling, cold cases, and conflicts of interest. The murder exposed flaws that allowed bias and assumptions to cloud judgment. In response, the LAPD strengthened its cold case units and improved transparency in investigations involving officers. New protocols were put in place to prevent future miscarriages of justice. For many officers, the case was a painful reminder of their responsibility to seek truth, no matter how difficult, to protect the innocent, and to hold their own accountable. Outside the department, the story of Sherri Rasmussen became a cautionary tale. A reminder that justice can be slow, but it can never be stopped. For viewers, it's a sobering reflection: behind every headline is a human life lost, a family shattered, and the tireless work of those who refuse to let silence win. Sherri Rasmussen's story is not just about murder. It's about resilience, about persistence, about the power of truth, even when buried beneath years of darkness. And in the end, that truth set her free. In the quiet that followed the conviction, the question remained: what would be the legacy of Sherri Rasmussen? She had been taken too soon, at just 29, with her whole life ahead of her. A nurse, a daughter, a wife. Brilliant, compassionate, and full of promise. But even in death, Sherri's life would continue to matter. Her murder, long dismissed as a botched robbery, forced law enforcement to confront uncomfortable truths: that personal relationships can cloud investigations, that evidence can be overlooked, even when it's right in front of you, that even those sworn to protect the public are not above suspicion. In police departments across the country, the Lazarus case became a benchmark, a subject of training seminars and ethics discussions. Cold case units were emboldened. Investigators reminded that no case is truly closed until justice is done. And families, so many families of victims, found renewed hope. If Sherri's killer could be brought to justice after 23 years, then maybe theirs could, too. For the Rasmussens, the pain never disappeared. But they chose to carry Sherri's memory forward, not in grief, but in purpose. She was a healer. She would have wanted her story to help others. "That's what we try to do," said Sandra Rasmussen, the mother of the victim. The case echoed through popular media, books, podcasts, documentaries, all asking the same question: how could this have happened? And each time the story was told, the spotlight returned, not to Stephanie Lazarus, but to Sherri. Her smile, her spirit, her potential. In the end, that is her legacy. Not the way she died, but the way she inspired others to seek the truth. What lessons do we carry forward from their stories? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What stood out to you? What questions did this story raise? Your insights keep these conversations alive. So please, like the video if it resonated with you, share it with others who value truth and thoughtful storytelling, and subscribe for more real cases explored with clarity and care. Until next time, stay curious, stay respectful, and remember, some stories must be told, no matter how long it takes.